So today I want to talk about something that I've actually been meaning to talk about for months, because several months ago I finished rereading Animal Farm by George Orwell, which I actually enjoy more than 1984, even though 1984 is, I think, much more famous. And so the premise in Animal Farm is that a group of animals living on a farm, as you might have guessed, actually take over the farm from the human masters. And so they sort of convert it into what very much feels like a communist commune, where those who were the underclass and sort of the slaves of the farm, the animals, now become the masters, and they get to run the farm as they see fit. They are the workers taking control of the means of production, essentially. And so that's a very nice idea until sort of the natural state of things begins to assert itself. The pigs claim themselves as, obviously the smartest, and so they should clearly, rather than doing manual labor, they should be in charge of running the farm themselves and sort of deciding what everyone should do. And then because it's so important for them to be taken care of because they're in charge, they then need, extra food rations, and they should be able to sleep in the humans' beds inside the house instead of out in the barn, and so on. And so, through this series, of incidents, it becomes very clear that there is an income disparity widening between the upper class pigs and dogs and the lower class rest of the animals who are doing all the actual work. So I wanted to read just a quick passage from the end, which is just so indicative and enlightening in terms of our current situation. And so the only thing you need to know about this is that the windmill in the story is, they had decided to build a windmill because it brought with it promises of greater efficiency, and it would be able to generate electricity and do work for the animals so that the animals wouldn't have to do as much manual labor. And, everyone would be better off for it. And then also just know that Snowball and Napoleon are two, main character pigs. Snowball, who very much wanted for things to sort of work out for everyone and made promises about the windmill. And Napoleon, who's sort of the secretly nefarious leader who abuses his power. So towards the end of the book, it says this: "The windmill, however, had not after all been used for generating electrical power. It was used for milling corn and brought in a handsome money profit. The animals were hard at work building yet another windmill. When that one was finished, so it was said, the dynamos would be installed. But the luxuries of which Snowball had once taught the animals to dream, the stalls with electric light and hot and cold water and a 3-day week, were no longer talked about. Napoleon had denounced such ideas as contrary to the spirit of animalism. The truest happiness, he said, lay in working hard and living frugally. Somehow, it seemed as though the farm had grown richer without making the animals themselves any richer, except, of course, for the pigs and the dogs." And I don't know about you, but that actually gives me chills to read it and think about our current state. And for those of you who remember, the woman talking to President Bush about how she, was struggling and working 3 jobs, and he congratulated her and was so proud of her and talked about how uniquely American it was to have to work that hard to barely scrape by. And so, so I read this and I thought, boy, I need to talk about this on the show. But I didn't know what to say about it, because it's so profoundly depressing to know that, this was, it was a reflection of the time when it was written and a prediction of the future. And it makes it seem inevitable that this is sort of the natural state of things, that life will always keep going back to, society will always keep going back to it. And so I sort of just posed the question in my head, like, okay, so what do I say about this? What do I ask the listeners about this? Do I ask for an answer? There seems not to be one. But I'm glad that I didn't talk about it then, because I have an answer now. And it's actually the inevitability of the endlessness of this struggle that I've come to take comfort from rather than become depressed by. And it actually comes from hearing an interview with Chris Hayes. He's been doing lots of interviews. He's promoting his new book, Twilight of the Elites. And I know I heard him on several different shows, and he talked about the myth of Sisyphus in one of them. And I could not for the life of me find where it was, but I was able to find another interview he did in print. And so I'm going to read a little bit about what he says of the myth of Sisyphus. And if you're not familiar, that's the myth where Sisyphus is made to roll a boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down to then go back to the bottom and roll it to the top for eternity. And so this is what Chris Hayes has to say. There is no final fix, no static condition. The nature of having egalitarian commitments is recognizing that the work is never done. The inevitability of that. It's a little like the Camus essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. The inevitability of that doesn't mean it's invalid. It means the struggle continues. You keep fighting for equality because equality isn't the natural state of human beings. I think that's in some ways the really profound insight. Inequality is baked into the cake. Inequality and hierarchy are natural, but that doesn't mean they're right. That doesn't mean there isn't a productive tension between those forces and the forces of equality. And so now, for the first time in my life, thinking about the myth of Sisyphus brings me comfort. I think about where we are now and how, it feels so much like the boulder has rolled to the bottom of the hill. It's so easy to become discouraged. But if you take the really, really broad view and recognize that is natural, that is the state of things, it is natural to have to repeat these steps endlessly. And when you recognize that that is the system you're working within, I don't know about you, but I can take comfort knowing that fighting the good fight means never, ever actually succeeding, and being okay with that, and just recognizing that it's the fight that counts, and it's the incremental improvements that count, knowing that there is no end in sight. There is no end, period. There is no point at which we will have reached an equal and fair society. It's never going to happen. It will be a constant struggle. And knowing that helps me weather the bad times, knowing that it's all part of the natural process of things.